Alright, so we finally got our fuel pump. Only took a week and a half to get it, or, well, a week and a half. And we've already disconnected our fuel lines here. Just getting them out of the way. Now, some people will use a screwdriver to loosen this ring. I don't like using a screwdriver because it'll dig into this plastic. And use a 1x2 or a piece of wood, or if you have a flat brass drift, that would work pretty good too. But you're just trying not to dig into the plastic too hard. So just take a hammer, tap the ring around until it gets relatively loose. Whoops, gotta get that out of the way. And then you'll be able to lift this whole unit out of the tank. So, and actually, it might be better at this point. This puppy is really stuck in there. I'm going to get the big channel locks and see if I can turn that with them. Well, big channel locks didn't work. You can't get them down in there. I'm sure they make a tool for this, but buying one for one job just isn't worth it. So just keep tapping with the wood, and there it goes. There's your top. Now would be a good time to, before you pull that out, just to blow a little of that debris out of there. Sure, you've loosened a little bit of it up with all that tapping going on, and the ring is off. And this is a one-piece type thing. It's put together so that it can move around. And then you just want to pull the unit out and kind of weasel it up this way and that way. And as you can see, there's our brass float. This is the problem with these things. It's full of fuel. The whole float is full of fuel, and it's leaking right there at the clip. I'll pop that right out of there. See? That's all fuel coming out of there. That's why my gas gauge always ran on empty. The brass just, it cracked right where it holds on to the arm. And the new pump, I'll show that to you in a minute. That comes with a neoprene type or cork rubber something or other float, like most new vehicles do. This was just a real bad idea. Ford didn't have a better idea at that time. And of course, there's going to be an O-ring in here. And we'll want to get that out. I think there's an O-ring in there. Yeah, there should be. Alright, hang on. Okay, so, yeah, I got a pick, and the O-ring stuck to the old sending unit here. So there is that groove for the O-ring right there, and of course you want to wipe that clean. Get it nice and clean, and it's got a lot of muck in it too. I expect that out of a truck this old. And what you want to do is you want to get just very little air. That way you don't get a face full of gasoline. Now, here's the new sending unit, and as you can see, the float is some type of a plastic, rubber, not quite sure what it is, but these won't fill up with fluid. So this is the way to go with a new one. And now what I also do is I'm going to take a little bit of grease and I'm going to coat these threads. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a lot of rust in there. I'm going to take a wire brush and clean that off. And I'm still going to put a little bit of grease on there, clean these threads off, clean these threads off pretty good, and that way I won't have to use a hammer and a piece of wood to get this back on. Now the one thing I did see here, here's the new O-ring, and that'll go right into that groove there. It'll just lay like that. I'm supposed to have two new clips, one black and one white. This is the proper type of clip, and then a black one that looks just like it. I have no idea or no clue what the hell this stupid thing is. Never seen that before with a fuel pump, and it might be for something else, but it's not for this job. Luckily, I have a whole drawer full of these clips, so you know, I save them when I get new ones and reuse the old ones where possible, and it'll work. You know, it'd be nice if I had the black and the white one, but these will work either way. You just got to make sure that they pass through both holes to hold the line on properly. So I'm going to get to cleaning up and put this together, and we'll go from there. Okay, so got everything cleaned up, and what you want to do with the O-ring, take a little bit of grease on your finger, not a whole lot, and just coat that O-ring. Make sure you go all the way around, and you'll feel it gets a little dry. It'll just a tad more grease. The grease won't hurt this. This is fuel and grease resistant rubber. And what I like to do is I like to take a little dab here and there and put it in the groove, and that will hold this in place. So little trick for you. And I've cleaned that up, and we're not putting a whole lot of grease in here. We're just gonna put a little bit in the threads, kind of like antiseize, if you will, and we're gonna put it into a couple different places so that it'll have room to spread. And now I'm not using any special grease. It's just kind of general purpose wheel bearing grease, I guess you could call it. So I'm just going to coat that a little bit. I'm going to coat the opposing threads here just a little bit, like that. And I'm using kind of the wet part of the grease, you know, the part that gets oily, not the heavy grease, because that won't be necessary. And that's it, you know. And basically, when you want to put your pump in, you put it in the same direction that you took it out in, and you'll have these two bosses here that will line up with the detents and the tanks. So basically, you got to weasel it in again like this, and you know, get it in there. Make sure your sock is on there good, and down she goes, and there it is. So now we put our collar back on, get it over the hose ends, like so, and then we'll put our collar on. Make sure your threads are lined up good, and it should go on fairly easy. Notice I did say fairly easy. Okay, make sure that everything's in position, that you're not moving it around. And that's where we're stuck. So, okay, we take the piece of wood, and I guess we'll tighten it down like that. Alright, so it was almost home. No big deal. These clips, when you put them in, make sure that they go through the bottom hole right there, and they're both out. Not that they miss or go past it. Same thing with the other one. Where did I put my clip now? Right there. Okay. And you'll want to put that like that. Want to go there. Make sure you'll hear it click. You'll see there's a white one, so there we go. Click, and I put it in the wrong way. You want that in this way. There we go. Okay, that'll keep your fuel hoses from blowing off, which they shouldn't do anyway. And then go ahead and replug your plug connector, which will be the next thing on the agenda here. Make sure that all of them hit. I'm missing the front one. That got broken, I guess, some time ago. And that's that. So now, that's the fuel pump. As to the tube, I got the new tube, but I'll tell you right now, nothing to it except this hose clamp and basically, well, alright, hold on. Okay, so you just want to loosen up the hose clamp and you want to take this thing off. It'll probably be hard because it's old and the rubber doesn't want to stretch anymore. And it's working its way up pretty good. You could always take a razor blade and cut it, but I don't like doing that on a plastic tank unless I have to, which I don't think I have to. Just work it up. There we go. Okay. So there's the old hose, hard as a rock, and we got the new hose here, which has a little bit longer of a filler neck. And what we want to do is put that in there. It should squeeze on nice and easy. There you go. Now, the measurement over here, I hope you can see this. You want to go from the back of the cab to the middle of the hose, should be right around 7 inches. Okay, that'll bring you within 1/8 of an inch or so of the hole, and you can still move this around enough to get it in there. Put your hose clamp down there, open it up enough to slide over. Okay, get it down there. Make sure it's nice and even and right up above the lip. Okay, now tightening with an air gun on rubber, these things tend to jackhammer a little bit, so I'm going to get a wrench. I'm going to put a hand wrench on this, tighten it up, and then that's it. That's the whole fuel pump and bed fiasco. So I hope this helps somebody, and if not, well, get a professional mechanic to do it. Alright, so me being an old fool, messing around with old shit, I never learned. I should have just gotten rid of this goddamn truck before I put any money into it, but I started doing things to it and it's too late, so I got married to the fucker. Anyway, the fuel gauge, as we saw, was full of fuel, and let me get out of the way of this fan. And being that the float was full of fuel, of course, you know, it stood to reason that the gauge would read empty all the time. So I put the new one in, plugged everything in, and then the gauge read over full. And I figured, well, maybe the rod needs to be bent a little, or, you know, maybe it got hung up on something in the tank. Took it back out again, put it in, everything was fine. Then it ended up reading empty again. The tank read empty, and now the fuel gauge was working fine. So I took an ohm meter, and you know, I've got a pretty good DVOM here. I've got a Fluke digital volt ohm meter, very good. I've been using this thing for God knows how many years, and you know, I did the ohm out, took the sending unit back out of the tank, moved it up and down, and yeah, it was reading fine. The level was reading at the right ohms reading for what it had in the tank. So, okay, fine, you know, I checked the wiring harness and ended up, yeah, coming up into the instrument cluster and the dash, and I went right into the wiring harness here, same color-coded wiring. The ground is good. The ohms readings were perfect on the wire. It had continuity. There was no grounds, no shorts, and I plugged it in the sending unit. It gave me the same ohm reading of the sending unit, which well, it meant that the signal was coming up into the instrument cluster. So, pull the instrument cluster out, which is here, and these aren't fun to pull out, but these have a CVR, which is a constant voltage regulator, that goes into these, and you can see here that this capacitor got very, very hot. Now that might have come from you know, this thing being on empty for so long, and or just old. I mean, the truck is 27.5 years old, so trying to find this was a real chore. I did find one on eBay that's remanufactured. Somebody took the time, find out what capacitors belong in it, replaced them, and yeah, $40 for this little piece of shit. And you know, the circuit board, obviously, you know, it's good. I ohmed out the circuit board over to the gauge itself, and everything checked out good there. If you go by the factory manual, which I do have on all these, you know, they want you to use a rotunda electrical tester, but you can use a volt ohm meter if you know what they're trying to get at. So following the path on a circuit board is easy, as it is on a you know, this type of circuit board too. And once you see something that got that hot and you know, worn out, and you have a problem like this, so sometimes it's not always that cut and dry, guys. You know, it takes a little bit more. Yeah, the float was definitely full. We all saw that. It had a leak and a crack in it, and it was definitely reading empty due to that. But you know, the saga goes on. You know, and if things don't work out right, you might have to dig in deeper. Now, if you're not comfortable with taking a instrument cluster apart or a dash, something like that, and you're comfortable with putting a fuel pump in, well, at this point what you would do is you would, you know, take this to somebody else that's more comfortable doing this type of work. I am, because I've done it all my life, professionally, so this is nothing. It's just a pain in the ass with a truck this old, or any vehicle that's this old, and it's not a collectible, it's not a, you know, something that people restore or hot rod out, or, you know, these are just POS trucks from way back when, that you know, people don't put this kind of money into it. If I had to pay labor on the work that I've done on this truck, I'd have, you know, 8-9 grand into this truck. It's ridiculous. So I don't have to pay anybody for labor, but you know, and I do my research, get parts for cheap. So there it is, people. I'll go ahead and I'll put this video up for the entire you know, fiasco that we've been through so far. And you know, now I gotta put everything away, and then I guess it'll take another week to get this voltage regulator in, and they said it'll fit. it's the right one for the truck. And I'll do a quick update at that time. I know this video got rather long, but unfortunately doing it in sections and trying to explain things as best I can to a possible layman or shade tree mechanic or whatever, yeah, it's going to take a little bit more entailed information. Maybe I did or didn't hit on everything that I could have, but this has gone on long enough now. And, you know, I do tend to ramble with the pain pills and the beer, which now has come to a conclusion. I'm going to go ahead and clean up, shut this down, and here we go, another week of waiting. And you know, luckily I don't need the truck. I mean, I've got other vehicles. I've got the bike, I've got the Lincoln. If both those break down, I guess I could always drive the truck without anything in it, hook up the steering column again, and go to town. But yeah, so there it is, people. This is where I'll leave this video. Still not feeling too bad about it, but yeah, you know, be aware that there may be other factors involved and things that might happen, so consider the fact that you might not want to start a project if you're not going to follow it through all the way, because it'll be wasted money at that time. So in either case, hey, I'm going to have a bunch of beers now, you know, get drunk, forget this happened, and I hope you guys have a great day. Adios.